Okay, let's see where we're up to.
You're on South Bay, you were talking about Gimel.
We're talking about base of it all. Yeah. So we're just going to go a little bit backwards over here. Yesterday, we learned that at the second base of Mikdash, they decided to expand the Mizbeach, 4 amos in each direction. Let me just make sure I got that. Yeah, 4 amos in each direction. And they made in that extra space sheet and pipes that goes down to the bottom. Why did they do it? Because they didn't have enough room. They had plenty of room for the multitudes of people by the first base of Mikdash, and there was much fewer people by the second base of Mikdash. So Gemara, the fire that came in at Shemayim by the first base of Mikdash was much more intense and efficient, and it was able to burn more karbonos in a smaller area. In the second base of Mikdash, they didn't have that benefit, and therefore they had to increase the size of the Mizbeach. So that's what we learned on Erev Shabbos. So Amar Rabbi Yosef said, Lav Hainu, the Tanya, isn't that what we learned? And that's why Rabbi Yosef forgot his learning, and he was suggesting, I don't understand. Isn't the reason why they added to the Mizbeach not because that they were running out of room? Who said it had anything to do with that? Maybe it was just it says in the pasuk, "Vayechinu hamizbeach al mechaynaisov," and the Brisa teaches us that we learn from that pasuk is shehigiu l'soif midaisav. They had a gilui about the understanding of the psukim that explain the dimensions of the mizbeach by the second base of Mikdash that they didn't have yet by the first base of Mikdash, and maybe that's why they expanded it. Break the Gemara. How could you say that? V'aksiv akol b'ksav miyat Hashem Allah hiskil. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave great detail to David HaMelech about the construction of the Beis HaMikdash, and Shlomo was fully equipped with all the information necessary. So how could you say that there was some new information that became available to them by the second Beis HaMikdash that they were not privy of by the first Beis HaMikdash? Ella Amar Rabbi Yosef, it must be that Kra Ashkach V'Darash. In fact, there was a pasuk that they darshaned by the second base of Mikdash that they never darshaned by the first base of Mikdash. So Avada Kodesh Baruch Hu instructed David, but they didn't have the full understanding of what the instruction was that was nigla to them by the second base of Mikdash. What does it say in the pasuk? Vayomer David, Zeu Beis Hashem Elokim, V'Zem Mizbach LaOilo Yisrael. So there's sort of a comparison between the whole base of Mikdash and the Mizbach. Ki bayis. Ma bayis shisha mama, just like the heichal, the base of Mikdash was 60 amos wide. Af mizbeach shisha mama. So too the mizbeach. I said wide. I'm not sure if it's wide, but there was 60 amos. Rashi says arka, it's length, so it's not wide. Just like the base of Mikdash was 60 amos. Af mizbeach shisha mama. And Rashi explains it doesn't mean that they were instructed to build a mizbeach shisha mama. It means they got zoning, they got approval for coverage of 60 amos. But they were going to be able to use whatever it is they felt they needed, but they just had approval to go up to 60 amos. So Avada was told to David HaMelech, but they didn't have a full understanding of it till later. Sorry, get rid of the things that don't belong. Okay. Zog to Gemara, Bishlam Abayis. Now we have a new question. They came back by the second base of Mikdash. How did they know? They didn't have GPS coordinates to determine where everything belonged. So Bishlam Abayis and Minkar Tzarasai. It had a big foundation. The base of Mikdash was a grand building, so there was for sure some zeicher of remnants left that they knew how to build. Elam Mizbeach Minayali. How did they pinpoint the exact location of the Mizbeach?
That's what was important. In the middle.
But the problem also is they had all those machlokes and whatever shittas they had. Once they knew where the base of Mikdash was, they acquired the mass. So why couldn't they just extrapolate from there?
This is one of the last 10 doctrines about how, like the monthly just said, like where the Mizbeach is going to be.
And I understand that, but there wasn't about where the Mizbeach was, but wherever it was, they should have known. they should have known from the first Beis Hamikdash to the second Beis Hamikdash. But
Or
obviously they
how big-
didn't.
Or how big it should be. We'd ask the cut.
No, we're asking for its location. We're asking for its location, and we'll see in a minute. We'll see in a minute. Amar Rabbi Lazar, you know how they knew about it? Because they had a vision of Nevuah. Roi Mizbeach Banui, they had a vision of a fully built Mizbeach, Umechoil Hasar Godol Oimei Demakravelo. So that vision showed them exactly where they should build the Mizbeach. Nafcha Amar, Afroi Shal Yitzchak Ro, they saw the Ephah of Yitzchak that was burnt on the Mizbeach. Now it happened, Shamunach Boy Samach. Now, Grada, there was no Afroi Shal Yitzchak. You know why? Because Yitzchak was never shechted. It means the aisle that they shechted on Klaimer. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Nachmeni Amar, Mikol Abayis Kula Hireich Reich Keteris. Everywhere on the site they smelt the beautiful fragrance of Keteris. Misham, but from the area of the Mizbech, Harichu Reich Evorim, they smelled a sizzling geschmack Sunday afternoon barbecue. Amar Rabbi Bar Bechana Rabbi Yochanan. Shloish Nevi'im Alu Himoim in Agoyla. We know those are Chagai, Zechariah, Malachi came with Kol Yisrael back to Mizbech. Hasheni Echad Sheheid Lahem Al HaMizbech. This is what I was referring to a minute ago. One that told them exactly the dimensions of the Mizbech. The Echad Sheheid Lahem Al Mochem Mizbech, and one that showed them where it belonged. So both were unknown. The Echad and the third Sheheid Lahem Shemakriven Apapi She'ein Bayis. They would be able to be makar of karbanos on the Mizbeach, even though the Beis Hamikdash had not yet been built, because Kedusha, Rishayna, Kitcha, even La'asad Lavai, and the Kedusha of that Makam remained, and therefore they were able to be makar of karbanos. The Masnisa Tana, Rabbi Lezman Yaakov Vaymer, Shlosh Nevim Alu Imayim in Agleila, Echot Shehet Lem Ala Mizbeach, V'al Makam HaMizbeach. One Novi told them both things, the dimensions as well as the location. And the third, our Lashon Ksiva is Ashuris. The font that we have is Ashuris. Shmak block letters, easy to read. But we see coins from the olden days that they say they're Hebrew, but I can't even discern what letter means what. That's what they used to have the Torah in. And the Navi told them by Bayisheni that you have to change the font. You have to change the font. So I'm assuming that the Sefer Torah Shekosvei Moshe they couldn't use it anymore because the font didn't automatically change. It wasn't like it was an E version that you could just click a different font. So Pashtus, they started making Sefer Torah with a new font. Tanu Rabbanan, the Seifim had to take an update course. Tanu Rabbanan, Karen, the Kevesh, the Yosy, the Revua. Each of the four chronos that are required on the construction of Mizbeach, a ramp that's required, a Yosy that's required, and review the fact that it has to be square. Ma'akfin, if it's missing any of those features, the Mizbeach is possible. But midas arkay, midas rachbay, midas kemasai, ain't ma'akfin. How do you know which are ma'akif and which aren't? Amrafun amakra ha-Mizbeach. Wherever the Torah mentions a feature, along with the word ha-Mizbeach, that tells us that feature is mandatory. And when the Torah talks about the Karen, the Kevish, and the Yisoid, and the square, it mentions the word Hamizbech. Furthermore, if you're going to say that rule, then I need to add other items to the list that should be Ma'akiv. Elamayata Kiyar L'Rebbe, the Soiviv of Rabbi Yosy Rabbi Yehuda, because there's another pasuk that we're going to find says Hamizbech, and there's a machlokes if that pasuk is referring to the Kiyar, or if it's referring to the Soiviv. But whatever it is, one of those two, you'd have to tell me is also Ma'akiv. Hachanami de Ma'akiv. The Nasata Oisa Tachas Karkoiv HaMizbeach Milamato. Vitanya, the Brisa says, Ezel Karkoiv, Rabbi Yomer Zakir, Rabbi Yosy, Rabbi Doimer Zasoive. So you're right, Enechanami. One of those two items will also be Ma'akiv, precisely because of your suggestion that it says HaMizbeach. The Tanya Beluntin Brisa, Oisa Yoim, this was the day where the Kohen did the avodah wrong because he was a tzedeki and he didn't pour the water on sukkahs on his feet on the mizbeach. He poured it on his foot instead, and everybody watching stoned him with their esrogim. And it says that day because he was stoned, nivkeba karen mizbeach. The karen and the mizbeach are damaged. They brought some salt to temporarily fill in the karen ustamu, and they plugged it. Not that counts. That wouldn't be considered a repair. V'loy mipnei shekosher la'avoida, ela shelo yira mizbeach pogum, shekol mizbeach shele karen v'keves v'yisod v'ribu apostle. Rabbi Yosy ben Yehuda Omer afa soivev. So you see clearly, in fact, that yes, these items are going to be ma'akat this as a mizbeach. So the joke is that they must have used Taimani Yisrogim in those days. Why? Because a small little Chazonish Esrig, how much damage could it do? A big Zavdig Esrig, that would smash it. But Rashi actually says not like that. Rashi says, Oysayoim, Shenosach Koyin Tzeduke, Me'achag al Raglov, Urgamu Kolom, Kedarbini Besukkah, it broke. Oh, he doesn't say over here, but he brings down in the Mesivta from other Rishonim that they didn't just throw Esrogim, they threw rocks as well, because he brings down that that coin got killed. You don't get killed by having esrogim thrown at you. It must be that they threw rocks at him as well. And the Yerushalmi says, he quotes from the Yerushalmi over here that says, so Rashi and Sukkah says that the kohen died from esrogim, from stones, because they threw stones. And their Chalnar says, even though it says they stoned them with esrogim, they for sure throw stones along with it, because there's no way a soft peri can be pugim to carry the mizbech. And the Yerushalmi says that he died from this. So how would he have died by having had esrogim thrown at him? It must be that they throw stones with it as well. Okay, Zog to Gemara weiter. Tanu Rabban, Ezeu Karkov. We've been talking about this Karkov. What is the Karkov? So there's two shitas of what it is. Either it's a pathway that was made for the Kohanim to walk around the surface of the Mizbeach, Bein Karen LeKaren, Makoim Hiluch Ragle Kohanim, and it was an Amma wide. So Rashi explains it was a track that was around the perimeter of the Mizbeach that was slightly depressed from the rest of the surface, so it's made like a track for it. Frank the Gemara, they couldn't walk around the perimeter of the Mizbeach there because they would be obstructed by the Koronis. So in other words, there were two amas all the way around the perimeter that was slightly indented. That was the track for the Kohanim to go around. Developing. So if you think about it, if the Mizbech was an amma by 5 amas, and there was a track around the perimeter that was 2 amas, in fact, like we had the Cheshbon earlier, the Makam Amarocha was only 1 amma by 1 amma. Frank the Gemara, how could you say that the Karkov was a feature on the top of the Mizbech, on the surface of the Mizbech? But if the pasuk says Tachas Karkuvai Milamatat Chetchay, under the Karkov until half the Mizbech. That clearly sounds that it's on the wall of the Mizbech. You're right. Trey Havi, there were 2 Karkovs. Chad Lenoi, the one on the side of the Mizbech, was designed to beautify the Mizbech. The Chad Kohanim, the Loi Nishtarku, and the other one was a path around the surface of the Mizbech so that the Kohanim should not slip. Midas Arkoy, Midas Rachboy, Midas Kemosai, we said our Ein Mak.
How would they slip?
I guess there's a lot of action on the Mizbech.
Yeah.
We were talking about there was no way that the Beis Hamikdash would pass any health and safety inspection. No guardrails, slippery ramps, right? We're even going to learn about the slope of the ramp, and it was far more slope than what's allowed today for a ramp. So the Beis Hamikdash, I don't think, complied with the Ministry of Labor. So let's see if Rashi says specifically why.
You're talking about a walkway around.
Yeah.
If it's lower down and they can hold on.
But it's not just a little bit of an inch, so it wasn't like 3 feet down. It wasn't a proper guardrail.
Right.
So I can't imagine it was so deep.
The rim.
So it's created like it's called a knee wall, not a knee wall. It's called a parapet. When you're on the roof and the walls, when you're on the roof and the walls come up higher than the roof, it's called a parapet. Call it a parapet. Those are a pain in the neck when you climb up with a ladder. But when you get up to the top, then you got to jump down. We're always climbing ladders up on roofs, so a parapet's a big pain. But when you're working there, it's much more secure. Yeah. Don't forget, we don't have ramps going up to the roofs. We have to go up by ladder bouncing around.
To go up.
Chris to go up. Father still go up. Yeah, even though I'm afraid to go up. I remember I'm very afraid of heights. So when I bought my first ladder, I bought the most expensive, strongest ladder out there because I was so afraid. And the chutzpah, the name of the ladder, you've seen these ladders, are called Featherlight. There's nothing Featherlight about them. They're the heaviest ladders. And I had to use for 5 years. I couldn't just throw it out. For 5 years, I was lugging around this heavy weight of Featherlight. And every time I saw the name Featherlight, I cursed because of Featherlight. It's the heaviest ladder the world ever built. And there's Dr. Gemara weiter. The Chama, okay. So I'm have money. It's again never ibit and matoif. It's many handlers your side this week, right? So Omar of many said, right? Ulevad shelo yifchesenu mimizbeach shasa Moshe. Even though the dimensions are not makiv, this week. Okay, it's close enough. You shouldn't make the mizbech smaller than what Moshe made. The Chama, how big was the mizbech of Moshe, the mizbech of the Mishkan? Amar Rabbi Yosef, Amma. It was only an Amma. Machakul, they laughed at him. Chamosh Amos Eirech. The Chamosh Amos Roicha, Ravu Yeh mizbech. So they were laughing at the Rabbi Yosef. You don't know the first apostle? Amalei Abaye said, you don't understand what the Rebbe said. Dilma Mokai Maracha Kamar. Rebbe means the Mokam Maracha. Amalei Rabbi Yosef, this is a man who understands. Oh, Mar, the Gavarabba, who you Abaye or a Gavarabba, Yoda, my Kamina. He knows what I'm talking about. He knows what I'm talking about. Kari Alayu. So what? How did Rabbi Yosef refer to the Lotzonim who were making fun of him, who didn't chap what he was talking about? You know how he referred to them? He referred to them as B'nai Keturah. Oh, that's mamish what we learned this week. It's also Lubin strikes again. Why did he call them B'nai Keturah? Because they are B'nai Avram Atem. In other words, not all Zerah Avram were created equal. They're on a lower class. Why? Because they couldn't understand what he's talking about.
Looking at the military, it's 6 kids.
Avram had 6 kids from Hagar.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, he had 6 kids.
I don't know.
You mean there might be other people that are going to claim marriage roll away from us? B'nai Achseder of Tarfon. Tarfon had a sister who had children. And their children were like She'eni de Elishos. Habu Yasvi Kameder of Tarfon. We were singing of Tarfon, and he was saying a shir, and there's so many things that they can ask, but they're chulun, they weren't interested in the shir, they weren't focused. So he wanted to provoke them to get them around eternal learning. So Pasach V'Amar, he said the following: the Yosef Avram continued on, as we learned in this week's parsha. V'Yigach Usmo Yuchni. Her name was Keturah, not Yuchni. So then they piped up. They were by laning. He said, "Shema Yuchni." Nine, stack right? They corrected the Balkoida, right? Usually everyone's for Shlofen, and the Balkoida makes a mistake. Everybody wakes up, right? Amr lay Keturah. So now you woke up. So Kari Alein b'nei Keturah. Why? Because till now you didn't ask any questions. You were just sitting like a goylem. Now, as Rashi says, "Einam yoidim l'daber ba'alocha." Then now you woke up. So he called them b'nei Keturah. So b'nei Keturah is like an insult to somebody who's like somewhat in the arena, but not on the track. Amar Abaye Bar Huna, Amar of Chama Bar Guya, Gzirin Sha'asa Moshe. So Moshe Rabbeinu cut perfectly shaped logs that he used for the Maracha. They were exactly Archan Amma, Beroich Van Amma, and how thick were they? Kemechek Goidish Saw. Now, when they would fill up a measuring cup of a saw, they didn't want it to be heaping, they wanted it to be flat. So they used a long straight edge to run across the top to make it flat. So the Mefarshim tell us that it's not really talking about the thickness. It just means however thick it was perfectly smooth, it wasn't wavy on top. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah ba'amagduma. It wasn't a full size amma, it was like a 2x4, is really 1 3/4 by 3.5. Why? Because if it stuck out from the Mokam HaMaracha, when the Koyanim are walking around, they can get knocked by it. Amar Rabbi Yosef, Hanyu the Tanya. Why do you say that it was? Why do you say that it was?
Not the Mizbeach, it's the Maracha.
There's the Maracha on the Mizbeach Achita. But they're walking around it. They only have a small path around it, so they're going to bang into it. Oh, what
daf are we on?
Well, I'm learning now Daf Samach Beis, which was today's daf, but at 7:30 we're starting with your shir where we left off Thursday night.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember yet. I'll have to look up. I don't remember where we left off the top. Man, I remember once.
Right, where are you holding now?
I'm holding on Daf Samach Beis Amid Beis.
Said New Testament.
Samach Beis, Amid Beis.
Yeah.
Got it. Oh,
Where are you this coming Shabbos?
where am I? This coming, what do you mean?
Because you owe me a chayv, and I'm coming to collect from the chayv.
I
You
owe
know
you a
what chayv you owe
chayv?
me? You should remind you of the chayv you owe me.
I think it's a yamoid.
That's right. By Shruli's bar mitzvah, you said no. I'm going to do it by the oifuf. I'm not doing the yamoid now, but I'm going to do it by the oifuf.
No,
That's
something, I wasn't there. I don't remember what it was.
But now I'm wanting the chayv.
I got no problem.
Okay,
No
thank
problem. Miyat Hashem, I'm coming home tomorrow.
you.
Miyat
Okay, Baruch
Hashem.
Hashem. The Tanya we learned. Amar Rabbi Yosef Alav Hainu the Tanya. It says Allah Eichim Aser Allah Eish Asher Mizbeach, and we learn from there Shelo Yehu Eitzim Yoitzim Min Mizbeach Klum, meaning it was perfectly sized. It wasn't necessarily small, which is how Rashi explained it. Tanan Asam we learned on what side of the Mizbeach was the ramp. We know it was on the south side. How did we know that? Tanan Asam Kevesh Hayot LeDroi Moshel Mizbeach. How long was the ramp? Oirech Shloishim Mushtayim. It was 32 amas long. Al Roichev Sheish Esrei. It was 16 amas wide. Binanimili, how do we know this? Omar Avhuna Omar Kra. It says V'shachat Oisai Al Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafoina. Sheyeh Yerech B'Tzafoin Upana B'Darim. Yerech Mizbeach Tzafoina. Rashi tells us, look at it like someone is lying down with his legs pointing tzafon. His face would be facing Darim. The face of the Mizbeach is the entrance, is where you go up the keves. So therefore, from Yerech HaMizbeach Tzafoina, meaning the foot of the Mizbeach, will be to the north. If someone's lying down, his face would be to the south. Frank Gemara, how do you know he's lying down? Maybe he's standing. So maybe the ram's in the tzafin. Amarava Rami Gaver Ape. No, it means the guy's lying down on his face. Amalei Abaye Adraba. Tritz voice of Gaver. Maybe the guy's standing. Amarlei, it says about the Mizbeach Ravu Aksiv. Ravu is a lashon lying down, like Ravutz. Frank the Gemara. Frank the Gemara, but me boile the marba Ravui. The pasuk Ravui is trying to tell you that it's square, not lying down. So how can you also extract this extra bit of information as far as the direction is concerned? Dr. Gemara, because Miksiv Maruba, if it just wanted to teach us that the Mizbech was square, it should have Maruba here. Ravua also sounds a little bit like the guy's lying down. Frank the Gemara, Ulutemeich, Miksiv Robots. If the term meant lying down, it's just like robots. Amalei Ravu Ksiv. You're right. Ravu is a little bit vague. It's half and half. The mashmahachi, and that's why we dash and decided to teach you the mizbech was square, and decided to teach you that the entrance to the mizbech was on the south side. The Tana Ma'isela Our Tana learned it from a different place. The Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, there's a pasuk that talks about the mizbech, and at the end of the pasuk, it says, this is in Yecheskel, Uma Loiseyu, and when you go up its entrance, Kenois Kodim, turn to the east. Call peanuts. Chata poina. Anytime you're turning, lo yehu elo derech yamin lemizrach. You should always be turning to the mizrach. So let's think about it. When you go up to Mizbeach and you're going to the mizrach, you're going to be going towards your right. Now, when you're going around the Mizbeach, how are you going right then? Because Rashi tells us you always have to be facing the Mizbeach. So you get to the southeast corner, and now you need to move up the east wall. But if you're facing the wall, weiter, you're moving to your right. And that's how you would go around. Frank Gemara, all the pasuk says is, Penois Kodim, you have to go to the east. Well, Ibazai, go around the other way. Go the long way. Ve'emes Shmoyel lemizrach. Go to your left and go all the way around till you get to the mizrach. Zokim Eloisol Kedaitach. That's not mistaber. The Tani Rabbi by Yecheskel, Yamish also Shlomo. Shlomo made a mobile mikveh. He made a big hot tub in the Azara, a big massive mikveh, and it was on a huge base, and the base was actually 12 oxen, not live oxen. It was part of the the carving of this edifice. So Aymer al Shnei Maser Bakar, this is a pasuk talking. Shloisha poinim tzafayna. 3 were facing the north. Ushloisha poinim yama. Here it means west. Yama. Ushloisha poinim negba, and 3 are pointing south. Ushloisha Painim Mizracha. That's how I know who you're must be west. And 3 are pointing to the east. And we darshan from here, Kal Pinoi Shata Poina Loyu Elader Chimin. Lemizrach. So how do I see here from this brisa? I see being that it's talking about directions, it's talking about the directions in a counterclockwise motion. And how do I know it has to be Lemizrach? Because that's what the first pasuk says. Umay loisdei panois kadim. So up to Gemara, how do you see from the Frierdiker brisa of the dimensions and the layout of the Yam Sha'asher Shloima? How do you see that you need to be panel yamin? Helman boiler ligufei. The pasuk is just telling you the layout of this item.
Right.
How do you see from here that you have to learn? I'll tell you why. In Cain poinim lamali. When the pasuk was describing it, the pasuk would have said, "Omer al shnei masar bakar, shloisha poinim tzvayna, ushloisha yama, ushloisha negba, ushloisha mizracha." Why does the pasuk keep on repeating poinim? Vayis to tell you you always have to turn to your right. Now I'm a little bit stuck over here because I thought does yama mean west or does yama mean east?
West.
It means west.
No, it's the way.
But the problem is, umaloishe panis kadim over there means east.
No, it means west.
How are you going to the west? You're going to the east. That's where I'm getting a little bit stuck. It means to the east, you're going to the right when you get up to the Mizbeach. That's why I'm a little bit
No,
confused.
he's just using this pasuk as a description to tell you that because it says ponim, that's how you travel.
No, Panim tells you that you always go to your right. But how do you know that you go to Mizrach? That you know from the first pasuk Rashi points out. So look at Rashi where he points this out. Rashi says, "Lo yehu eladech kamin." I'm here. I'm going to point to it inside. Ki minyana dekra dekachashav asol derech kamin mitzafay lamar b'marvel dorm uchashatam makiv shum davar ufanocha elov. When you're going around any item and you're facing that item, va'ata soivevoy, and you're going around mitzafayin lemayriv from north to west, liyamincha ata hoylech. You're going to your right.
Isn't Kadim the east?
Because you're backwards, right? You're facing.
I'm facing the Mizbeach, and I'm moving to my right, and I'm moving to the east,
I'm going up the ramp.
and then I start walking sideways to the right.
I'm going from north to south.
Right.
I'm going to the west.
I'm going from south to north. When I
Up the
get to the
ramp.
Mizbeach, I walk to my right which facing the Mizbeach, which is towards the east.
Oh, it's to the west.
No, the Koisel Maravi is behind the Heichel. The entrance is east. The Harzaisim is that way, which is to the east.
That's right, Kadim is
When I
east.
go towards the entrance, I'm going towards the outside of the door, towards Ezra I'm headed east. Yep. The Koisel Maravi is behind the base Kodesh HaKodesh.
Mine, west, east. Yeah,
I'm sorry?
Mine.
So that's why I'm a little
Not
confused
that-
what Kodesh means.
Oh, that's, you're right.
So I'm not sure. Here, at one point, Kodesh means to the west, and at one point it means to the east. I'm actually a little bit confused.
Maybe that's what Rashi means. Your face is towards the west.
Okay, could be. I'm just a little confused because even if you look,
Right.
even though I looked at the Mesivta, Umay Loiseyu Panois Kodim, that's the first pasuk we brought. Shamayel Mizbeach, Dainu Akevesh, you boyfin, Shakalpina Shataponim, Imenu Mizbeach, Lo Yehu Eladerch Yamin, Lemizrach.
Right.
Klemer, Kishat Tipnal Yamin, Tiazu, Peniel Latad Mizrach. So, the Baal, that's the case.
You're turning it to the east.
I'm not turning to the east, I'm going to the west. I'm not sure.
Yossi,
Yes.
isn't Kadim
No,
the
you're
east?
turning to the east.
What's
Your
that?
face is to the
Isn't Kadim the east?
That's what I'm confused. In one pasuk it seems like it's the east, in one pasuk it seems like it's the west.
If you're going
Okay.
up the ramp,
You're headed north.
you're heading.
And then when you go to the right, you're headed east.
Correct.
Ditvach Slimy.
I'm facing north. When I turn, I'm facing west.
Correct. Your punim is towards the west.
Okay, could be. But Penoishu doesn't mean the face. Penoishu means the way I'm turning. So I'm not sure. But whatever the case is, the
Ditvach
only way
Slimy.
you go up to the ramp, move to the right, and move to the east, that only way it's possible if the ramp is on the south side. If the ramp is on the north side and you went up and you went to the right, you would be moving to the west. So that's how we know that the ramp must have been on the south. But the fact that the Novi is describing the direction, it's proof positive to the position of the ramp. Show Reb Shimon ben Yosi ben Lakunyas Reb Yosi. I'm Reb Shimon ben Yosi. Avir yesh ben kevesh l'mizbeach. Everybody who ever traveled to Sabah knows, mind the gap. There was a little gap. There was a gap as well
Last
between the
time
top of the kevesh a couple of weeks ago. You know what happened? My Enikel from Lakewood, they never saw subway before. So I had a cheap Chalamoy trip. I took them all on the subway. I got on, they don't pay a penny. I only have to pay. We went all the way down to St. Clair and we came back. And that was the best Chalamoy trip they ever had. And the cost would be $3.25 my fare. Zog to Gemara. Avir Yesh being Kevish L'Mizbeach. And then for the rest of their lives, I'm saying, remember, I took you on the train. Avir Yesh being Kevish L'Mizbeach. Amaloi. The Ati Iyata. You don't agree that there was a gap? Of course there was a gap. It says, the Torah is comparing the Nesinas Abosar onto the Mizbeach to the Nesinas Adam. Madam Rika. You don't pour it down the water Mizbeach, you have to throw it. Why? Because there's a gap there. So Abosar Rika. So obviously there's a gap, because if there's no gap, I'd have to throw it for it. Just put it down. Amar Loi, that's not a riot. Shani Oimer, maybe I made Bitzad Myracha. Maybe we're talking about the Zrika of the Bosar, what we're referring to be compared to the dam, is you're standing in front of a big bonfire, Vizorik, and you throw it onto the bonfire. Amallah, he asked him, Kishu Zorik, so maybe that's what it's referring to. So you don't have a right that there was a gap. So he answered back, Amallah, I don't understand. We have a pasuk that's telling you this chiddush by comparing it to the dam. Kishu Zorik l'maracha, the luka hu Zorik, or l'maracha she'ened luka hu Zorik? Is the Kishu Zorik l'maracha the luka hu Zorik? Is he throwing it onto a maracha that's ready on fire, or is he throwing it onto a maracha before the fire starts? So Avoimer, of course, the maracha luka hu Zorik. So Zok Gemara, I don't need a pasuk to tell me that he doesn't put it on. He has to throw it. It's on fire. Only Chaim Tzvi can jump into the fire and put it on. Everybody else has to throw it, right? I don't need a pasuk to tell me you throw it. There's a big fire there. You can't put it on. So therefore, if there's a limit over here, the limit must be telling me that there's a gap between the kevish and the zvech, and that's the comparison to Zrika that the pasuk must be referring to. Rav Amar, if you look at the comparison to dam, you look at it from a more granular perspective. Kidam, madam avir karka mafsikoi. When the kohen is standing away from the mizbech and he throws the dam flies through the air. What surface is below the dam while it's airborne? The floor of the azara. Af basar, so too when you throw the basar, avir karka mafsikoi, it has to be airborne, not over a part of the mizbech to get onto the marachal. You're suggesting it has to get over the floor of the azara. Okay, gavaltik. Amar Yuda, Shnei Kavashim Ketanim Yotzim in Akevish. There are two small ramps that came out of the main ramp. Shabahen Poinin Liyasoid. One went to the Yasoid, which was the one on the left or the one on the west. Ulasaivev was the one on the right or the one on the east. Umuvdalim in Amizbech. There was a gap in between them and the Mizbech, Male Nima, a thread, just that it shouldn't be directly connected. Mishum Shenemer Sovev. It says you have to shmish to dam saviv. You cannot have saviv if there's an area that's blocked off. So it has to be at least a little crack. Rabavo Amar Ravua. It says it's got to be square. If the kevish was connected, part and parcel of the mizbeach, there goes your square. We need two psukim. They're both telling me the same thing, that there's a gap. No, because of the saviv. How I mean the agil makel? I could have thought the mizbech could be round, and I need a little gap. Because of Rechmana Ravua. Because of Rechmana Ravua, how I mean the arch v'kap. Ravua doesn't mean square. Ravua just means it has four parallel sides. Could be a rectangle. Because of Rechmana Saviv means everything's equal. All four sides have to be equal. Tanan also we learned in the Brisa. Hakevesh v'mizbeach shishim mishtayim. 62. Well, let's think about it. If the mizbeach is 32. And the kevish is 32, isn't that 64? How do you get 64? The teretz is if the kevish was going to come very close to the surface of the mizbeach, it has to overhang the yisoid and the saivev. So that's why there are two amis between the mizbeach and the kevish that overlap. Now we'll just make a run for the Mishnah. Zok the Heilige Mishnah.
That's a big gap.
No, because it hung over it. It came close. It came right there. It leaned over. It leaned over, yeah. Amar Rami Bar Chama. Rami Bar Chama said, Kol Kivshei Kavoshim, over here, yeah. All of the Kivshei Kavoshim, all of the different ramps that were out there, the slope was shalosh amos la'ama. It was a 1 to 3. For every amma up, it was 3 amos lateral. If I'm not mistaken, the Ministry of Labor and OSHA mandates that it should be, I believe, either 1 to 4 or 1 to 12 even. The slope that's legal when you make a slope in any building. 1 to 3 would not count. There's no way the Mizbeach would ever pass a safety inspection. There's no guardrails. The slopes are too high. But then again, Kohanim is reasoning him. Chutz mikivsho shel Mizbeach, except the kevish of the Mizbeach had actually a smaller slope. It wasn't 1 to 3. It was 1 to 3 3/4. Chutz mikivsho shel Mizbeach shel yeshalosh amos umechza the etzba and a finger ushlish etzba b'zachuza of a thumb. So it was a little bit more stretched out than the regular 3-to-1 ratio. Now, there's some very interesting geometry discussed over here. The first bit of geometry was discussed is the 32 amos that we're talking. Are we talking about the hypotenuse, the sloped surface, or are we talking about the lateral length? We're talking about the lateral length.
Yeah.
So what happened is the Bach thought that we're speaking about the hypotenuse. So he asks, if that's the case, then the Mizbeach, if the hypotenuse is 32, so the lateral is much less than 32. So the terrace is, we're talking about the lateral length. Where this ratio becomes a problem, Tosfos talks about, is by the kevish of the Mishkan. Tosfos makes a cheshbon that if you work out the dimensions, the bottom of the ramp will be too close to the south wall. It wouldn't work. So Tosfos
Depends where you think the Mizbeach should.
I guess it's working. Yeah, here. So Tosfos wants to say could be the top height of the ramp wasn't parallel to the height of the Mizbech, and you have to take a step up. And Rashi says, how could you say that? It says, you're not allowed to have any steps. So there's a whole discussion about that. Okay, we'll stop here, and Ben Hashem will be mamshech tomorrow.